Okay. Happy Thursday. Welcome to another edition of From the Nosebleeds. I am Richie Carney sitting in for Joey Gunner alongside Will Peterson. Will, plenty to get into today. How you doing?
I'm great, Richie. Feels like Super Bowl 60 preview could be here in 72 hours.
I actually think that you're right. And I think that obviously the Broncos pacing the way in the AFC as the top seed can certainly lend to that evaluation. But this Packers team is interesting to me, Will, because I feel like in a lot of ways there are parallels to be drawn to the Denver Broncos. I think the Packers as a team are kind of scrappy. They're definitely defensively dominant. The Micah Parsons trade certainly helped them in that regard. But I think they can be kind of boom or bust depending on the performance of their quarterback. And I think it's fair to speculate that the Broncos are kind of like that. When Bo Nix is on, man, the Broncos look like they're impossible to stop. And when Bo or the offense as a whole has a little bit of a bad game, we get games like we saw on Thursday night against the Las Vegas Raiders, where the crew's calling it like an abomination and an embarrassment to football. And the Packers, to me, are kind of like that too. But if this is a Super Bowl preview, which you kind of hinted at there, and I agree with, does that mean that this is a game that the Broncos can't afford to drop? Because you put an article out at denversports.com that said the Broncos losing a game on the final month of their season wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. And you used historical context from the Eagles last year to the Broncos in 2012, etc., with the important that it doesn't cost you the number one seed to the New England Patriots, who have a little bit of a softer schedule, especially in the final 2 weeks. So where's your head at with this game as it relates to the Broncos and in being in that kind of must-win mode to maintain the top seed in the AFC?
Yeah, I mean, no one turns on a game going, oh, I hope my team loses because it may be good in the long run, right? Like, that's just not how we fan. We want the Broncos to win every single time we turn it on. But what's interesting is the Patriots and Bills do play at 11 a.m. So we will know that result by the time the Broncos kick off. And if the Bills win, and we are Bills Mafia, like, Richie, I don't think I'm going to throw you through a burning table, but, we are Bills Mafia on Sunday.
If that's what it takes, let's do it.
You'll do it. That would be huge for Denver if Buffalo can pull out the win in the early window. And to be honest, if they are going to drop one, this is probably the one because it's the NFC game, right? Like Christmas night, the Chiefs may have that big old asterisk with a loss, they're eliminated. How much fun would it be to finally kill that dynasty, at least for this year? And then I don't think people should sleep on, they're 2 games back in the standings, but they're really only 1 game back because they hold the tiebreaker. So if they come to Denver 1 game back, week 18, that will be for the AFC West. If they win, they'll have the same record and they'll take the division. So, do I want the Broncos to win? Of course I want the Broncos to win. You want them to win every game. But that being said, if the Patriots lose in the early window and then the Broncos lose in the late window, don't fly off the handle. Don't panic. The only reason I'd say to panic is if they come out and lose 31-10, then we're going to have whole different conversations. If they lose 23-20, we're all going to be bummed and disappointed, but it's not going to be the end of the world. So kind of a long-winded way of saying we need to see what happens in Buffalo and New England. And then if you are going to drop one, losing the NFC in a tight game, wouldn't be the end of the world.
Yeah, and you didn't mention the Jacksonville Jaguars in there, who I think are kind of that team where you look at them and you say, this is a Trevor Lawrence-led team that we've seen this story before, but they've been playing pretty good ball. They're running the ball well with Travis Etienne. Trevor Lawrence is doing more than not to not lose games for his team necessarily than sometimes to go out there and win it. And that's another one of those games where, again, the Broncos, because of the identity that they have formed in this 2025 season, it feels like to me when you have the question of like a trap game or a potential overlook game, there's a part of me that's like, I don't know that the Broncos are susceptible to fall into a trap game because offensively, it's kind of a Jekyll and Hyde situation to where we don't know where we're going to get. And so many of their wins, I believe it's 6 of their wins on this 10-plus game win streak have come with a fourth quarter comeback or overtime. So they haven't really, outside of the Raiders game that they just played, coasted to victory very often. And so when you have this game that's going to be kind of a tight, the Broncos being home dogs to the Green Bay Packers, and then you have a Jaguars game, and then finishing up down the backstretch with the Chiefs and the Chargers, I just feel like there's not a ton of letdown opportunities. So I can at least feel some solace in the fact that if the Broncos win out or if they drop a game here or there, I don't think we're going to be coming in the next morning saying, well, they were looking ahead to X, Y, and Z, because I just don't think that's how they operate.
Yeah, and Sean Payton talked a little bit about that yesterday, about how all 4 of these games are going to be really tough. He got asked about being underdogs, kind of brushed it off, but then I thought was interesting, sort of launched into an answer about how much they're going to need the home crowd. Said it was great against Kansas City, but basically implied that's at the standard. You know, the stadium was shaking that day at Empower Field in Mile High, and Sean wants it that way the rest of the season and the playoffs. Bo Nix got asked about being underdogs and said, my mom thinks we're going to win, which was maybe his zinger of the season. Pretty funny from a QB who does have a little bit of dry humor up his sleeve every once in a while. But yeah, I think with 3 of the next 4 being at home, we got to remember the Broncos haven't lost at home since October of 2024. We're going on 14 months since they've dropped a game at Empower Field at Mile High. So, the odds makers can make them dogs, whatever. But they're worried about wagers and making money. The Broncos are worried about finding a dub. And if the Broncos do find a dub on Sunday against the Packers and the Patriots lose, then you're getting closer and closer to maybe Week 18 doesn't matter. Different conversations for different days. Would you bench the starters, play Christmas night, and then not play again until January 18th or 19th? I mean, we're talking about a month at that point in time. So, I know you'll get into that as time goes on, and fingers crossed, those are the conversations we do get into, because that means the Broncos have the 1 seed locked up. But yeah, I think the home field is going to be a tremendous advantage. And remember, the Packers have only won once here in their entire existence. I understand different teams, all that, but it was the Brett Favre to Greg Jennings deep down the sideline, Monday Night Football 2007, the day after October ended, by the way. Rockies got swept on a Sunday by the Red Sox, and then Brett Favre broke our hearts on Monday Night Football. But Green Bay's historically struggled here too. So I don't really understand the underdogs thing. I do think it's a little disrespectful. Broncos didn't play that card yesterday, but me as a fan, I do think it's a little disrespectful.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Again, you look at home teams and you're like, usually the home team will get a field goal just by virtue of being at home and having their home crowd and environment. So when you inverse it and you flip it and you're a home dog by virtually a field goal, I think it was 2.5 last that I looked, that adds an extra layer of, we don't even think you're good enough to keep pace at home in a tight game. But Will, when we're talking about, last thing on the Broncos here, when we're talking about Bo Nix and his overall evaluation into his sophomore season, I think it hasn't quite gone the way that many of us thought that it would, especially right out of the gate, because the final half of the season for Bo Nix in his rookie campaign, he was one of the best statistical quarterbacks in the NFL. He was a bona fide rookie candidate that ran up against a miraculous season performance in Jaden Daniels and one of the best rookie tight end seasons of all time in Brock Bowers. So when we're now going to be 3+ months in to Bo Nix's sophomore campaign, with all of the ups and downs and the roller coaster that it's been, what have we learned? What have you learned about Bo Nix that you or we didn't necessarily know going into his sophomore season?
Yeah, I think what I've learned is, I felt like last year was a lot of boom or bust, right? And the booms were big booms, right? The Marvin Mims 3 touchdowns, the 1 against Cleveland, the 2 against Cincy, the playoff touchdown to Troy Franklin. That's absolutely a boom in Orchard Park, put him up 7-0 on the Bills. And then what did he do against the Raiders? He managed the game. I mean, Richie, he was 31 of 38, but barely more than 200 yards passing. That's something like 5.4 yards of completion. All that said, he got asked about it post-game and said, I don't think it's a bad game. And then I've been on Denver Sports 104.3 The Fan. I've been on digital. We look at game manager as such a negative label. And to me, that's just not the case. He didn't turn the ball over against Las Vegas. They chewed clock on 3 drives. I mean, they had 3 incredibly long drives where the Raiders offense was just on the bench. Their defense was staying fresh. And Bo did manage that game, and everyone's going to say, 24-17. It was not 24-17. It was 24-7, okay? They won that game handily. It was never stressful. It was never to come out of that victorious. So I think what I've learned is rookie Bo Nix felt boom or bust. Sophomore Bo Nix feels like he can manage football games. And guess what? When you have a defense this good, if you can manage football games, you can hoist the Lombardi Trophy.
I want to shift gears, Will, to the Colorado Avalanche, who have certainly been much more boom than bust to start their 2025 campaign, off to one of the best starts in certainly franchise and even in some respects NHL history to start their season. But Will, when you look at the Western Conference and specifically the Central Division standings, doesn't it kind of feel like this historic red-hot start that the Avalanche are on? Nathan MacKinnon, the first in the NHL to cross 50 points. The Avs, as a team, pacing their division. But Dallas right on their heels within a couple of points. Minnesota right behind them. You've got the expectation that Edmonton and Winnipeg are going to figure things out. Winnipeg obviously dealing with some goalie frustrations and things of that nature. Does it almost feel like when you look at the Western Conference and the Central Division specifically, that the amazing feat that the Avalanche have accomplished to go through their first 30 or so games of a season almost isn't giving them as much breathing room as you would expect?
Yeah, it's crazy, man. You would think with a start like this, 2 regulation losses on December 11th, that they'd all but have the President's Trophy locked up already. And instead, Dallas is 2 points back. And that's why against Nashville the other night when Cale Makar scores with 8 seconds left, it's like, woo, they got a point because every point does count, which is insane when you're pacing for 140 points and perhaps breaking the Boston Bruins record for most points ever in an NHL regular season. But Dallas is just that good. And, I've said it many a times. I think Game 7 last year goes differently if it's at Ball Arena. I just do.
I agree.
I thought it spiraled out of control being down there in Dallas. They couldn't stop the bleeding in the third period. And so it sucks for the Avs that they can't relax or take a deep breath, but they have to keep their foot on the gas and make sure they get that 1 seed. Now, again, what's going to be really frustrating is if you're the 1, you can't play Dallas in the first round like you had to last year, but you are going to have to play them in the second round because of Gary Bettman's insane NHL playoff format.
Crazy.
And we all know that's the Western Conference final. Hell, you could make a case it should be the Stanley Cup final. But it's much like the Nuggets. If they have to play the Thunder, they're going to do it before the finals, and the Avs would have to play the Stars before the finals. So it's just a big bummer that the seeding's never gotten adjusted. That said, you can't just run and hide from it. At this point, you have to embrace it. You got to play the Stars in round 2. So guess what? Keep the foot on the gas and make sure that Game 5, Game 7's in Denver. And it's a historic start, but you're right. We're not maybe enjoying it as much as we are because we're having to look at the standings, which is crazy for a team to be 21-2-7, and we have to look at the standings.
It can feel difficult at times, I think, or that you have to kind of bend over backwards or extend to find really deep-rooted, legitimate things to be critical about when it comes to this Avalanche team, given the product that they've put out on the ice through the first 30 or so games of this season. But if we were to highlight 2 of those things and just play that exercise through for the Colorado Avalanche, I think it would pretty consistently be the power play, which continues, in my opinion, to kind of defy science in the fact that a team with so much speed, skill, precision, and offensive firepower suddenly has that neutralized or watches it go away when they have a man advantage on the ice versus 5-on-5, when they have the highest goals scored and the lowest goals allowed for the largest differential in the NHL. And secondarily, for whatever reason, Will, it does seem like, even though it's part of the reason why they've accumulated the points that they've accumulated, the Avs just struggle to win in overtime and in shootouts. What, from your estimation, might lead to that kind of disparity, where clearly in regulation, they're one of the best teams in hockey and certainly at 5-on-5, but focusing specifically on the overtime and the shootout, why does it seem to kind of not go their way when you start playing extra hockey?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's a question that, I don't know if it keeps Jared Bednar up at night because you're not going to see 3-on-3 or shootouts in the playoffs. But, they have left 7 points on the ice this year. I mean, 7 OT or shootout losses in the middle of December. That's a lot, man. That's trending for 14, 15, 16 of them on the season. I hope the number doesn't get that high. I'd say in 3-on-3, sometimes they try to be too perfect. Like they almost want to score a tap-in goal where someone's made such a dangle or such a play that they can just pass it to a teammate who's got 3/4 of a wide-open net. But then the shootout, I don't have the answer on that because Bednar's to the point now where he's tossing different guys out there. I mean, Gabriel Landeskog got his first shootout attempt of the season the other night in Nashville, and he couldn't score either. I'm not holding that against Gabe, but you would think just throw Makar, throw McKinnon, and then maybe a Natchez or a Nichushkin out there. He's tried, I believe he tried Victor Olofsson at one point. Like we're going down the depth chart here on attempted shooters, and none of them can seem to figure it out. So in overtime, I think they're trying to be too perfect. And then shootout, people are going to say this is a cop-out, but I think it's a crapshoot. I really do. I don't think it's you know what was fun, Richie? 15 years ago when they debuted the shootout, because we're like, ooh, penalty shots. This is cool.
Right.
You know what's run its course? The shootout. I've seen enough shootouts now that I don't get the tinglies going, ooh, this is fun. This is unique. It's just a dumb way to give out a second point, and unfortunately, the Avalanche aren't very good at it.
I agree with you in the sense that sometimes I think the Avalanche in an overtime setting, when you're talking about 3-on-3, overthink things a little bit. They try to make it too perfect or too cute with certain aspects. I actually think that's a similar reason as to why their power play struggles at times, because I feel like they just kind of are waiting for the right opportunity and they're continuing to try to cycle and move the puck. And it's what it's leading to is a disparity in just putting the shots on the net. They just, for all of the skill and the precision, like I mentioned, that power play one unit has. I mean, when you look at the Avs PP1, it's kind of it looks like an all-star team in some respects. And so I do think that's kind of a situation where they may almost just be getting in their own way or their own head a little bit, when in reality, their probably best course of action is just to say, hey, let's do what we do best and just pepper the goalie. And eventually one of those things is going to break through.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, it's the old cliche, put the puck on net and you never know what's going to happen. But I feel like it's truer than ever in hockey these days that if you get 40 shots on a goaltender, I don't care if it's Connor Hellebuck or Jake Ottinger or whoever, you're going to score 3 or 4 times. And that's why they've been so successful. I mean, they're leading the league in goals per game at almost 4 goals per game, but it could be 5 goals per game if they had figured out the power play. They had a 6-minute stretch in Nashville the other night, or an 8-minute stretch, where they were on the power play for 6 of those 8 minutes. Nashville committed back-to-back penalties. You know how many goals they got? 0. Yeah. It was crazy. They finally did score with 8 seconds left in a 6-on-4. Blackwood was on the bench. Nashville had committed a penalty. But, man, if you just take care of business there, you're up 4-2, 5-2. We're talking about another ho-hum regulation win. So plenty of time to solve it, but definitely that's something that needs to be figured out by April.
Yep, 2 things that I think will get figured out. I think the Avalanche power play in particular will find its level and will get better over the course of the season. And then you're really looking at a team that, at least for 60 minutes of regulation hockey, doesn't seem to have a major weakness. And they're probably going to need all of that, given the race in the Central Division and the race in the Western Conference, how tight it is from a points perspective, and the fact that you're probably staring at a second-round reunion one way or the other, depending how it shakes out. Will, thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate everything you do at denversports.com, and we'll catch up again soon.
All right, thanks, Richie. Take care, man.
You got it. To the rest of you out there, have a wonderful rest of your Thursday afternoon. We will catch you tomorrow at 9 a.m. on From the Nosebleeds.